Early morning unfolded with a gentle hush. The sky tinged pink as the first soft rays of sunlight filtered through the leafy canopy. Birds sang their delicate songs, and a faint breeze stirred the ancient oaks lining the street. It was the kind of peaceful dawn that made one pause and breathe deeply. But in a single devastating moment, that serenity shattered. A sharp gunshot pierced the air dry cold and cruel, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Beneath the ornate wrought iron gate of a stately old-world villa, a tall African-American woman stood frozen for a heartbeat. She wore a perfectly tailored black suit, elegant and authoritative, a style that spoke of years of hard-earned success. Now she staggered and fell onto the velvety lawn. Crimson blood bloomed rapidly on her pristine white blouse, spreading like a terrifying stain across the silk fabric. Her face, once composed and graceful, twisted with agony. Trembling fingers tried desperately to press against the wound in her side. Despite the haze of pain and the darkness creeping into her vision, her deep, intelligent eyes remained fixed upon the uniformed figure standing just a few feet away, the man who had pulled the trigger. He was a local patrol officer, his white uniform marked by a badge glinting in the morning light. In his hand, the black Glock still smoked lightly, as if it too were stunned by what had occurred. For a fleeting moment, his broad shoulders seemed uncertain, as though even he could not believe the act he had just completed. On the lush green grass, the woman's breaths came fast and shallow. Each inhale was a struggle, each exhale a reminder that life was slipping away. The birds fell silent. The only sound now was the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, as if nature itself had grown solemn in the face of such a senseless tragedy. Officer Alan Cordell stood over the wounded woman, a hulking figure of about 45, his broad frame filling much of the narrow driveway. His uniform, crisp and white against the green grass, presented an almost mocking contrast to the dark stains spreading across her silk blouse. In his right hand, he still clutched the Glock, the barrel faintly smoking, as though unwilling to relinquish its murderous role. His face, weathered and grim, carried lines of bitterness, eyes narrowed in cruel satisfaction, mingled with shock. "Freeze! Don't move, you bitch!" he barked, voice thundering against the quiet of the morning. Though she lay helpless, the life seeping from her side robbed her of any strength to obey. Her trembling hand moved only to press against the fatal wound, her lips pressed tightly as if to muzzle a rising moan. Each breath was a rasp, shallow and urgent, dimming the once brilliant intelligence in her dark eyes. For a moment, Cordell seemed to hesitate, as though wrestling with an unspoken realization of the gravity of what he had done. But then the rage returned, ignited by something darker than fear. He took a half-step closer, his boots sinking slightly into the soft grass, and barked again. "I said freeze, move an inch, and I'll finish what I started." She met his glare with a flicker of defiance, though her body quivered and her vision blurred, shame and pain etched into every line of her face. The question hung heavy in the air. How could a sworn protector of the community point a weapon at an unarmed woman who minutes ago had been nothing more than a respected neighbor on a serene Tuesday morning? No one watching could offer an answer. And in that charged silence, the horror of the officer's betrayal echoed louder than any gunshot. Moments stretched by as the blood spread across the lush lawn, and Officer Cordell still stood over her, Glock in hand, his stance rigid and unyielding. In the distance, sirens wailed, a harsh reminder that help was on its way. Within what felt like minutes yet was surely mere seconds. Two distinct sets of vehicles appeared, the local ambulance with its urgent red lights, and shortly after an unmarked FBI Chevrolet Suburban, its tires crunching on gravel as it pulled up to the estate's gate. Agents in plain clothes spilled out their expressions, taut with concern. One of them approached Cordell swiftly, shouting, "FBI mirror down. Drop the weapon now." The command pierced the air, jarring Cordell from his grim spectacle. In that instant, a narrow plank of truth surfaced. This wounded woman was not just any homeowner. She was Supervisory Special Agent Marissa Benton, 40 years old, one of the most respected senior officers in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In her tailored black vest and crisp silk blouse, she had embodied authority, intellect, and resilience at every turn. Few women, and far fewer women of African-American heritage, ever rose to her rank. Leading an elite task force dedicated to dismantling large-scale organized crime, transnational drug rings, and potential terror cells, she had become a beacon of competence in a world too often defined by prejudice and intimidation. Early this morning, Marissa had followed her meticulous routine, waking at dawn to practice gentle yoga, slipping into a bespoke jet black business suit and reviewing her case reports on a highly secured mobile device. She was scheduled to drive to Chicago's FBI headquarters for a critical briefing on an evolving investigation. No one, least of all Marissa, could have anticipated that she would instead find herself fighting for her life on the front lawn of her own home. As agents swiftly cornered Cordell and began administering first aid to Marissa's collapsing form, the true stakes of this crime hit home. A pillar of federal law enforcement lay gravely wounded, and the betrayal of a fellow officer threatened to shake the foundations of trust and security upon which the community relied. Officer Alan Cordell could not have been more different from the distinguished woman sprawled on the lawn. A 45-year-old local patrolman with a receding blonde hairline and a protruding beer belly, Cordell had earned a reputation throughout the precinct not for heroism, but for hot-headed behavior, a sour disposition, and a deep-seated prejudice against people of color. Rumors circulated that he frequently harassed black residents in the upscale suburbs, but whenever complaints were filed, they disappeared into the desk drawer of a sympathetic supervisor. As far as Cordell knew, there was never any serious consequence for his misconduct. That brisk Tuesday morning, Cordell drove his worn patrol cruiser down a quiet side lane, the old Springvale Road, as he often did on early shifts. Then he spotted the woman, tall poise, clad in a perfectly tailored black suit, standing in front of a grand, ivy-clad villa. In his narrow mind, nothing about her presence in that affluent enclave made sense. A black woman in such elegant attire. He felt certain she must be up to no good, perhaps laundering money or serving some criminal overlord. Without pausing to consider protocol or courtesy, Cordell flicked his red and blue lights on their harsh glow pulsing through the morning haze. He slammed the door of his Crown Allen IA and marched toward her with a swagger born of entitlement, chin jutting forward. "Hey, lady," he barked, voice ringing with brusque authority. "What are you doing here?" His tone brooked no reply, only suspicion. In that moment, the stage was set for calamity. Cordell's ingrained bias and unchecked aggression collided with Marissa Benton's composed dignity and unassailable sense of her own innocence. The brief encounter, fueled by Cordell's worst impulses, would quickly escalate into a tragedy no one saw coming, one that would expose deep fissures in the very institutions sworn to protect the public. Officer Cordell waved his hand dismissively as he stepped closer. "What are you doing standing out here at this hour? Got some urgent business?" His tone was sharp, brimming with suspicion. Marissa drew in a steady breath, her posture rigid yet composed. "Good morning, officer," she said evenly. "I am waiting for my agency vehicle to pick me up. This is my home." She indicated the grand iron gate behind her. Cordell's lips curled into a sneer. "Your home? Do I look like I'm that stupid? Show me some ID right now." Marissa slipped her hand inside her purse and took hold of her identification, her federal badge hidden behind a sleeve. But before she could fully present it, Cordell barked, "Nah, I'll just do a quick visual check." "Lift your jacket." With a harsh flick of his baton, he yanked back the hem of Marissa's tailored vest, bearing the pristine white blouse beneath. In that instant, an intolerable wave of humiliation washed over her. Marissa clenched her jaw, forcing herself to remain calm. She took a step backward, mindfully keeping a safe distance. Even in the face of such brazen disrespect, she refused to waver. In a measured voice, she asked, "Officer, may I know the legal basis for this search? Under what statute am I being asked to comply?" Her gaze locked with his, unwavering and clear, as though daring him to offer a lawful justification. Cordell's face darkened with contempt, but he offered only a shrug and muttered about keeping an eye on suspicious characters. Marissa's patience held firm. She would not allow his baseless harassment to go unanswered. Instead, she positioned herself, strong, dignified, and unafraid, ready to assert her rights even as the early morning light revealed the bruising indignity of his actions. "God above," Marissa said, under her breath, her voice firm, despite the pounding in her chest. "Officer, if you continue this, I will call my attorney and report your conduct to your superiors." Those words only fanned the flames of Cordell's anger. He straightened, chest rising, nostrils flaring. "You think you can lecture me?" he snarled. In an instant, he drew his Glock 17 from its holster and leveled it at Marissa. "Freeze, hands above your head. Now or I'll shoot." A heartbeat passed in suffocating silence. Marissa's mind raced, but she remained resolute. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted her hands, high fingers trembling. Her left side throbbed with pain and ache from Cordell's baton blow, and each breath felt razor sharp. Yet she spoke with measured calm. "Officer, please remain calm. I have no weapon and do not intend to resist. We can resolve this peacefully under the law." Her words hung in the crisp morning air, but Cordell's eyes flickered with something darker, a cruel thrill at controlling someone so obviously in distress. The sight of her gloved hand rising, revealing a flash of the FBI badge tucked beneath her sleeve, barely registered in his rage. Marissa's pulse thundered in her ears, but she refused to yield to fear. In that tense moment, she remembered every lesson learned during her years in dangerous field operations. Stand your ground, control your voice, and protect your dignity. Despite the searing pain along her left flank, she focused on steadying her breath. Each second felt like an eternity, her eyes locked on Cordell's, conveying both the legitimacy of her position and the injustice of his actions. Nearby, the muted rumble of sirens drew closer, though Cordell seemed oblivious. Marissa's fingers curled instinctively, as if bracing against the threat. She remained silent now, waiting not for Cordell's permission, but for the authority of the law to catch up with him. The crack of the gunshot echoed like a death knell. In an instant, the bullet tore into Marissa's left side and she crumpled as crimson pooled beneath her on the grass. Almost immediately, a sleek black Chevrolet Suburban burst around the corner with its lights spinning. Out poured plainclothes FBI agents moving as a coordinated pack. At their head was Riley Drake, young, sharp, and assigned to protect Marissa, shouting, "FBI, drop your weapon, hands where we can see them." In moments, agents fanned out to surround a stunned Cordell, each holding a Sig Sauer leveled and ready. Meanwhile, Agent Sinclair, a combat-trained medic, knelt beside Marissa, pressing gauze to the gaping wound at her hip, working quickly to staunch the flow of blood. The morning stillness shattered as the FBI secured the scene. Cordell frozen under their unwavering gaze, and Marissa's labored breaths punctuating the tense urgency of that life-saving moment. Cordell stood frozen, his world collapsing around him. For years, he had prowled these affluent streets with impunity, emboldened by the backing of his fellow officers, in a department that turned a blind eye to his misconduct. Now surrounded by steely-eyed federal agents, the illusion of his untouchable authority shattered. As he was led away in handcuffs, a TD-12 news bulletin flashed across screens: statewide FBI senior agent shot by local police officer. The broadcast recounted his history, numerous complaints from residents alleging excessive force and racial bias, none of which had led to meaningful discipline. His name, once a byword for brute law enforcement, now carried the weight of scandal. Meanwhile, Marissa Benton was rushed to Mercy General Hospital, her life hanging by a thread. Operating rooms buzzed with urgency as trauma surgeons worked tirelessly to repair the damage to her abdomen. For hours, her family, friends, and colleagues waited in tense limbo outside the operating theater. Katie Morgan, Marissa's closest friend and fellow special agent, later recounted how every minute felt like an eternity, thanks to the skill of Dr. Varm. Alan Patel and his team. Marissa's life was saved, but the battle was far from over. She was transferred directly to the intensive care unit, where nurses monitored her vitals round the clock. In ICU, Marissa endured searing pain with remarkable courage. Each wheezing breath, each labored movement reminded her that her body had been betrayed by someone sworn to protect her. Yet even from her hospital bed, she remained resolute. Federal investigators continued to gather evidence, determined to expose the systemic failures that had allowed Cordell's behavior to fester. In the days that followed, department insiders whispered that the police chief would be forced to answer for his inaction. As autumn leaves fell outside her window, Marissa fought her way back from the brink. Her physical scars would remain, but her spirit, tempered by this ordeal, burned brighter than ever. In time, she vowed justice would not be a fleeting promise, it would be a promise kept. While Marissa rested in the intensive care unit, her mind remained sharp and determined. Even as nurses tended to her wounds and the beeping monitors tracked her fragile heartbeat, she insisted on speaking with the federal investigators who had been dispatched. With remarkable clarity, each word precise despite her pain, she recounted every detail of that dreadful morning, from the instant Alan Cordell leveled his Glock to the second the bullet pierced her side and she collapsed on the pristine lawn. She described how he had spat bitter insults, how he had shown no hesitation, and how he had fired without any lawful cause or reasonable fear for his own safety. Simultaneously, agents combed through every available camera angle, the high-resolution footage from the ornate iron gate, the street-level security cameras on neighboring properties, and even the dash cams of Cordell's patrol car. Every clip confirmed Marissa's testimony. The split second Cordell drew down was preserved in crystal clarity, and his anguished, unconvinced gaze as he faced the onrushing FBI agents was forever recorded. Meanwhile, Special Riley Drake and Agent Sinclair provided their sworn statements about how Cordell had refused to lower his weapon until they had effectively cornered him, but by then the damage was already done. Behind the scenes, FBI headquarters mobilized a dedicated task force. Forensic experts flew in from Washington, D.C., their briefcases full of specialized tools, ballistic analysts to match bullet casings, blood spatter technicians to reconstruct the wound trajectory, and criminal psychologists to probe Cordell's deeply ingrained biases. They treated every scrap of evidence, spent shell casings, swabs of dried blood on the grass timestamps from security cameras with meticulous care. Each item was cataloged, cross-referenced, and double-checked, ensuring that when the time came for prosecution, no detail could be contested. Meanwhile, Cordell languished in a high-security holding cell at the county jail, his reputation in tatters. A single guard watched him day and night, ensuring he could not tamper with evidence or intimidate witnesses. Intel gathered from his own police records revealed a trail of past complaints, calls from neighbors accusing him of harassing minority residents, internal memos documenting his refusal to attend sensitivity training, and rumors that his superiors had repeatedly ignored those warnings. As Marissa's recovery advanced in small, painful increments, the foundation for a robust federal case was being laid. The joint FBI-DOJ inquiry promised a comprehensive, transparent investigation, one that would expose Cordell's abuses, challenge the complacency of his department, and reaffirm the principle that even officers of the law must be held accountable under it. A few months after the shooting, the federal investigation concluded with a clear and resounding verdict. Alan Cordell faced 5 serious charges under federal law: willful infliction of bodily injury while on duty, abuse of authority, deprivation of civil rights motivated by racial prejudice, and 2 other civil rights violations tied to his reckless conduct. When the trial began, Marissa Benton, still in a wheelchair and bearing the scars of that early morning, was present in the courtroom. She did not shy away from the spotlight. Her testimony, delivered with measured strength and a voice still tinged by pain, painted a vivid and heartbreaking portrait of Cordell's cruelty. She described how he had sneered before pulling the trigger, how her life had flashed before her eyes, and how she had fought for every breath as blood pooled beneath her on that immaculate lawn. Over several days, the jury listened intently to video evidence, forensic reports, and witness statements from both FBI agents and neighbors. When the jury retired to deliberate, their decision was swift. Cordell was found guilty on all counts. In an emotionally charged sentencing ceremony, the judge pronounced a 28-year prison term, an outcome that sent a powerful message not only to the defendant himself, but also to law enforcement agencies nationwide. Additionally, Cordell was ordered to pay Marissa $350,000 in restitution for her medical expenses, ongoing rehabilitation costs, and the emotional trauma she endured. Outside the courthouse, the community gathered in supportive silence. Many spoke of how this verdict underscored the urgent need for nationwide police reform, an effort to root out bias, enforce accountability, and rebuild public trust. Marissa, though still fragile, stood and addressed a small group of admirers. She thanked her colleagues, her medical team, and the countless advocates who refused to let her voice be silenced. Despite the long road of physical therapy and emotional healing ahead, she pledged to return to her work with renewed purpose. In that moment, Marissa Benton became more than a survivor. She became a symbol of unwavering courage and a testament to the belief that justice, though delayed, can never be denied. From this story, we see the message that anyone can become a victim of prejudice and violence, regardless of status or achievement. The issue is not just one officer abusing power, but also a system that appears fair, yet harbors loopholes allowing for cruelty and discrimination. The audience may ask themselves, is an individual's courageous act enough to transform an entrenched culture? I encourage everyone to share their personal perspective on this story. Have you ever witnessed a similar case, and what strikes you most about the power of a single voice standing up against injustice? Moreover, let's predict when racism will finally end. How many more years do we need to educate younger generations to live by equality, mutual respect, and zero tolerance for prejudice. Do you believe that stronger legal frameworks, community engagement, and education initiatives could spark a turning point before 2040, 2050, or even later? Feel free to comment below so we can discuss, build awareness, and spread hope together. Because only when each individual dares to speak out and act will this story cease to be repeated for others. Note, this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.